What's up, Packer fans? I am officially back. Thank you so much for joining me. For those of you new here, I am your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Before I move forward, a huge shout out to Jacob Westendorf as well as Perry Goldstein and Rachel Hotmeyer for holding down the fort the last couple days. They all did phenomenal jobs. Thank you so much for listening as I was out. But as I mentioned, I am so grateful to be back and talking Packers. I was simply on a vacation in Door County. It was a lot of fun, but I won't bore you with all that because I know that's not what you're here for. You are here for Packers talk, and it is a very big day as we kick off Tuesday. As I'm recording this on Monday night, there have not been any roster moves as of yet, which is classic Green Bay Packers. They tend to be one of the very last teams to announce moves. Now, I have no doubt whatsoever that those on the Packers beat that have sources will be leaking these out throughout the day on Tuesday. So we'll have a pretty good idea as the day goes along. But again, the Packers usually are one of the very last, if not the very last team to officially announce their roster move. So don't expect a ton of movement from the team officially until the actual deadline, which is 3 p.m. on Tuesday, Central Time, Lombardi time, etc. So that is all to look forward to on Tuesday. I say that not in a crass way. I realize that, well, as a fan, this is a entertaining day is a weird way to put it still, because everyone's excited to see the first makeup of that 53-man roster. Like, who's going to be that initial 53 that makes up the team for this upcoming season. But of course, still a dark day in the NFL where all of these players who have hopes and dreams of playing in the NFL, who have played football from very young ages to get to this point, are going to be released. Many will land on their feet, whether that be on other teams, whether that be on practice squads. As I mentioned the other day, Green Bay's got an 80-man roster. You know, you figure a couple of those guys are bound to go on IR, so you cut it down to maybe 78. Jay Sternberger is going to go on the suspension list, so that's to 77. You've got 53 plus a 16-man practice squad. Like, you may end up with only like 8 guys that actually aren't on this roster in some capacity in a couple days. But regardless, it's still not easy to be cut. It's still not easy to have to potentially relocate to another team. It's still not easy to take a pay cut from like a $650,000 minimum contract to, I want to say, like $120,000 practice squad contract. Like, if you got your salary cut into a fifth, you probably wouldn't be too happy about it. So still a difficult day for a lot of these players. So as you're on Twitter and as you are celebrating who makes the team, remember that there's still a lot of people that didn't. And this is, again, a very tough day for them. And but that being said, there's still a lot to go over, and I want to go over my official 53-man prediction, which I'll get to in just a moment. But before I do so, since I was out the last couple days, I do want to quickly discuss the Buffalo Bill game, but specifically Jordan Love, who I know threw a couple balls that he would like to have back that, you know, fans wish he probably didn't throw. I thought this preseason, his 2 games, and we of course wish it would have been 3, I thought it was incredibly encouraging. And I thought it was a very strong performance overall by Jordan Love. And I thought we saw, you know, still a prospect in Jordan Love, but all of that potential still oozes out when you watch him play. And I know that to the naked eye, you might see Kirk Benkert make some of the same throws, or, you know, what Jordan Love showed in his 2 games is still the potential to be great. And I mean great. I'm not saying he's ever going to get there. There's a long way to go before he gets there. But I've seen real true growth since day 1 of training camp last year. Frankly, since mini camps and OTAs this year, where everything in those mini camps and OTAs was a check down. He's now getting the ball downfield. He's throwing on time. His footwork is incredibly improved even throughout this offseason. His feet are leading him into the next read. We've seen that on a couple different occasions, not only in this last game, but against the Texans, as well as in some of the more recent practices. We see him, again, not hesitant to rip it when he needs to. We see him going through his progressions. We see him hitting checkdowns. We see him scrambling when he needs to scramble, although he needs to get down on the one occasion. Again, we see him making checks and you know, kind of not full audibles, but we see him changing things at the line of scrimmage. I think he looks more comfortable and confident. This may sound a little odd, but when you are the guy that's calling the plays and commanding your team, you need to have a bit of a presence about you. And I feel like Jordan Love has a presence, and it is a calming demeanor where it just seems like he's in control of the situation and nothing really rattles him. That is a really big thing to have for a young quarterback at this stage. he also has a little bit of that gunslinger mentality, which we saw. Now, at this stage of his career, preseason game 2 in year 2, his second start on the road in preseason, those throws, I'm okay with him experimenting a little bit. In fact, I want him to make some of those mistakes in preseason, not in-game action. We saw him want to be a hero at times at Utah State. We saw him want to trust his arm. I would much rather have a quarterback who trusts his arm and has more of that gunslinger mentality, and then you as a coach rein it in, than a guy that is gun shy and is hesitant to pull the trigger. And I mentioned going into this game, one of the things that I really wanted to see is how he responded to Matt LaFleur's coaching after game 1, because Matt LaFleur was very clear in game 1. He wanted Jordan Love to rip it and to trust his reads and to trust his arm a bit more. In game 3, that's what we saw. And on a couple occasions, one was a busted play, another was, under some pressure rolling out. We saw him throw into traffic a little bit. That is something he can learn from. Now, 2-3 seasons from now, regular season, he's making those same mistakes. Yeah, we have serious cause for concerns. If it is a repeatable issue, cause for concern. But I'm telling you right now, Favre and Brady and Rodgers and every great quarterback, Mahomes, had to go through those learning phases to figure out, and Brett Favre maybe never fully learned in some capacity, but had to go through some learning phases as to how to get those sort of plays out of it. And Jordan Love was great after the game, saying, yeah, that's a throw I can't make, needed to throw it out of bounds, need to live to see another day. It sounds like he got that lesson loud and clear, and we'll see how that progresses as his career goes along. But as you look at his overall potential and what he put on tape, to me, it all trended in the right direction, and it still showed his upside. And this is what you want from a young, trending quarterback, right? A prospect quarterback that is oozing with potential. You want to see that ceiling and that potential stay incredibly high as he continues to grow towards that potential. Right? Think of Mitch Trubisky, right, in the opposite direction. His potential was sky high. He started down here, maybe got slightly better, but all of a sudden over time, that potential comes down and you realize he's probably a lifetime backup quarterback unless he has a Ryan Tannehill situation, right, where he gets to a new situation, plays better, etc. Patrick Mahomes, potential was sky high. Year 1, didn't really see much. And then all of a sudden, year 2, it was this exponential rise, year 3, and so on and so forth. And we saw that go very, very quick. With Jordan Love, potential is still here. He's still here as a player, but he's showing signs of progression. What we don't want to see is that potential come down, and we don't want to see that lack of growth. We are seeing consistent growth, and we still see that high-end potential. That is a good spot to be in for Jordan Love, year 2, preseason game 2. And again, I am much more confident in Jordan Love after those 2 preseason games than I was prior to those 2 preseason games, because I think we saw a lot of the things of where he ultimately needs to get in those games. Is he there yet? Absolutely not, but he's showing signs of progression towards that with all the potential still intact. I'm excited about how he played. Now let's quickly go through 53-man roster projection, depending on when you're listening to this, especially if it's late in the afternoon. Might be a little late for this. However, you either get to kind of go through this knowing the answers to the test already, and then you can kind of make fun of me for which ones I got wrong. If you're listening in the morning, maybe this is still some fun conjecture, but let's go one by one through these positions. I'm going to go relatively quick because you know the names, but I'll kind of highlight any ones that I'm really looking at. Quarterback, I think only 2, Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love. I do not think Kirk Benkert has warranted a number 3 quarterback spot. Amazing story. Love the guy. He's bought into Green Bay and Green Bay Packer, everything from the day he got here. He's, like I said, a phenomenal story. He's played well enough to garner interest around the league. I think he's back on the practice squad for Green Bay, but I don't think he's done enough to warrant a roster spot on a team that is last dance, all in, whatever you want to call it. Keeping a number 3 QB in that situation just doesn't add up, especially when you've got the depth at some other positions and players that you're definitely going to want to keep. Running back has been decided for seemingly a couple weeks now. Hill has gone out and completely claimed that number 3 running back position and really run away with it. Patrick Taylor, Dexter Williams will certainly be, in the running for practice squad spots, but this is going to be Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, and Kylan Hill. Wide receiver, Devontae Adams, MVS, Randall Cobb, Allen Lazard, Amari Rodgers, and Malik Taylor. Yes, don't forget Randall Cobb, as I did on Twitter when I put out my list, and everyone was very upset with me. Yes, Randall Cobb will be making the roster. That was just a mistake on my end forgetting to put him on. But I think the only question here at this point is Malik Taylor on or off. Do you keep 5 or do you keep 6? If it's 6, it's easily Malik Taylor. If it's 5, they'd hope to get him back. I think he's done more than enough to garner a roster spot and fully expect him to be on the roster, Malik Taylor, as that 6th wide receiver. Tight end, fully expect 4. Robert Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis, Josiah DeGuara, and Dominique Daphne, with Jay Sternberger going on the suspend list. I think that suspend list will be short-lived. Now, maybe there's an injury to a tight end in the first couple weeks, which saves Jace's spot. Otherwise, if everyone stays healthy, I believe Sternberger would be cut in week 3. Yes, they do get a little bit of savings by keeping him on the suspend list for the couple weeks prior to releasing him. So I think he will stay on the suspend list for those first couple weeks. But then Green Bay will have to make a decision in week 3. And again, as things stand right now with no injuries, I think it's more likely than not that he does not continue with the team at that time unless they can potentially find a trade for him. Offensive line, I think there's potentially 10 here. This is a really difficult one because the David Bakhtiari and Dennis Kelly injuries really cloud this, right? David Bakhtiari, they could activate. He could be ready within the first few weeks, which is why they'd activate him right away. They could activate him and put him on IR, which would leave him out for at least the first 3 weeks, but ready to potentially go in week 4. They could leave him on the PUP list, but he couldn't start practicing until after week 6, ready for game 7. I don't think that's the direction they're going to go, so I do have him on the initial 53. Now, again, an IR right after that is a possibility, but my guess is he's on the initial 53. And then I have Cole Van Lanen making it over Dennis Kelly. That could go either way. And again, Kelly's injury could provide interesting in this situation. But I've got Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, Myers, Newman, Turner, Lucas Patrick, John Runyon Jr., Yash Nijman, Ben Braden, and Cole Van Lanen is where I'm looking at right now. So that's where I'm looking at my offensive line. I do think that this is a team that could keep 10 here. And I think there's just enough really good players on this team that you're probably not going to see less than 10, but we'll see there. Defensive line, I've got Kenny Clark, Kingsley Keke, Dean Lowry, TJ Slayton, and Jack Heflin. To me, Heflin's done more than enough to get on the roster, and I think he's earned that spot over Tyler Lancaster. To me, Heflin is new Lancaster with more potential, youth, better energy. I just think that he's like an upgraded Tyler Lancaster, and he's younger, cheaper, everything. So I think it's really going to be tough. I think they could keep 6, and Lancaster maybe keeps his spot. But right now I'm going to go with 5 with Heflin at that number 5 spot. Edge rusher is also tough because of Zadarius Smith's injury, but what I think they'll do is go with 4, Z, Preston, Gary, and Garvin, and then I think they'll try to get 2 of their younger edge rushers back, maybe a Tipa Naliai, maybe a Chauncey Rivers, and then I think they'll activate those guys from the practice squad if Z's not ready to go, but still likely Preston and Gary getting the vast majority of playing time in those situations, but I think they only keep 4 on the active roster. Inside linebacker, I think Isaiah McDuffie, you talk about that last preseason game being an opportunity for somebody to make a name for themselves. I think Isaiah McDuffie worked his way onto the roster in that last preseason game. I'm going to go Campbell, Barnes, Burks, McDuffie. And then I have Wilborn as the 5th. This could easily be Ty Summers, and that wouldn't be surprising at all. There's always one player every year who kind of is a special teams keep where maybe they see something in him or it just comes out of nowhere. Malik Taylor in a lot of ways was that guy a season ago. KB and Ento even was a little bit that way a season ago prior to them having to put Ento on IR to start the season. But I think this year that could be Wilborn. We'll see. It's kind of a shot in the dark if I'm being honest, but I have liked some of the tape that he's put on. I still think he could be a very strong special teams player. So whether it's him or Ty Summers will remain to be seen. They could also keep 4 here. And again, I think Summers has maybe a stronger chance, but I'm going to go Wilborn. We'll see what happens at that position. Cornerback, I think, comes down to Yadam, Ento, and then potentially who they could get off waivers, right? Or maybe even in a trade. I think Jair King, Sullivan Stokes, and Shamar Jean-Charles have the cornerback spots, the top 5 at least, wrapped up. Although I think Jean-Charles could actually be the 6th. I think Ento or Yadam could actually move ahead of him as the number 5. I think SJC kind of makes it a little bit more based on his draft status right now. But I think I'm going to lean on Ento right now. I think Ento makes it ahead of Yadam. $310,000 difference between the two. I think you throw on the tape. I just don't think you see that difference, which I think gives the edge to KB and Ento. At safety, I've got Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage, Henry Black, Vernon Scott and Christian Uphoff. I love Innis Gaines, but tackling was a bit of an issue this last game. I think he has a little bit of learning still to go. I think he's a shoo-in for the practice squad. I'd be shocked based on what he put on tape if another team claimed him. You never know, but I think it's unlikely. So I think they're going to hedge their bets knowing they can get him back on the practice squad. And then maybe if a David Bakhtiari or Vernon Scott go on IR for those first few weeks, something like that, I think maybe they bring they bring Gaines up to the active roster at that point, or he could just stay on the practice squad for a bit longer. Mason Crosby kicker, J.K. Scott punter. I think they could put in a claim there for a punter, but as of now, I'm going to go J.K. Scott. Long snapper, I went with whoever lost the Chargers battle, which was Cole Mazza, who I actually think is a pretty solid long snapper. However, he was released injured, so your guess is as good as mine, but I think they could go with a waiver claim here. Your smart money's probably on Hunter Bradley still, but he's really had a rough camp, and I think they could go finally in a different direction. We'll see what they do there, but don't be surprised one bit if they claim a long snapper off of waivers. So that's my 53. And I think for the most part, there's a couple, decisions still to be made there. I have Jace Sternberger going on the suspended list. Nothing else really super noteworthy there. Tyler Lancaster, Equinemius St. Brown, Dennis Kelly were probably a few of the names that, got cut on my list that I know a lot of other people may have had making it. But overall, I feel pretty good about the 53. I guarantee a couple of them for sure at minimum are going to be wrong, but that's kind of the fun part of this process. Again, hoping everyone that's on the current Packers 80-man roster goes on to have phenomenal careers, quickly bounces back on their feet. Hopefully Green Bay can get the vast majority of their cuts back on their practice squad. And again, all these guys can end up Hall of Famers. Not cheering for anyone to get cut, but it is an exciting day to see who is on that first 53-man roster and how Brian Gutekunst and friends put together this first 53. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Always appreciate it. I'll be right back here tomorrow, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be able to go through Brian Gutekunst's decisions and how they put this initial roster together. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.